Hey, welcome back to the stash. When it comes to Marvel villains, I honestly think that the majority don't even come close to one such as Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. The Kingpin has got to be one of my most favourite comic book antagonists of all time. His stories are always a highlight for me, and he's a part of some of the very best tales of Spider-Man and especially Daredevil. Today, most people recognise Wilson Fisk primarily as a Daredevil foe thanks to the incredible Netflix series, and from a certain point onwards in the comics, that's definitely the case. However, it wouldn't be until 14 years after his creation for him to meet his horn-headed arch-nemesis. Before Daredevil issue 170, the first meeting between the two, the Kingpin was in a way another Spider-Man mob boss with the exception of his immense strength. He played a massive part within the Romita era, and some of the most memorable covers from that period has him as the big bad. However, for this video we're going back into the late 70s to take a look at one of my most favourite battles between the Wallcrawler and Wilson Fisk. So join us today as we go over the Amazing Spider-Man issue 197, The Kingpin's Midnight Massacre. Our story begins in the mansion of Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin. After his men have successfully captured and injured Spider-Man, he is ready to begin the last phase of his plan. Spider-Man slowly awakens and is met with the horrifying sight of one of his greatest foes. He can't believe it. He was sure Wilson died during their last encounter, but in typical comic book style, he managed to survive. As Spider-Man sits there, Fisk recounts the recent events of his life. He begins with their last battle, and how he somehow lived. Yes, he was knocked into the murky waters during their fight thanks to a solid iron grappling hook, but one such as the Kingpin doesn't die so easily. He freed himself from all the underwater debris and managed to spot a drainage pipe. Lucky for him, it was free of water. It allowed him a moment to rest. He collapsed inside, but he was safe. He lived. Then hours, maybe days later, Wilson unceremoniously crawled through the murk and mire until he reached the surface. It had seemed though that the entire accident had given him temporary amnesia. So he spent months wandering around the city streets. A man who used to be like a king, reduced to one of those he used to step over like the bugs he viewed them as. Of course, someone like Fisk isn't easy to forget, and unfortunately for him, someone learned what happened. Someone who's been waiting for his chance to strike. The deadly foe known to the world as Silvermane caught wind of Wilson's current state and ordered a hit on him. Of course, he had to make it look like a standard hit and run, for if the word got out that Silvermane had done it, it would cause an all-out gang war. But he made one costly mistake within his hit that almost every man makes. He rammed the car into Wilson, yet he forgot that all that size on him was not fat, but solid muscle. And because of this solid muscle, Fisk managed to survive the impact. Less could be said for the driver. He was taken to the hospital where he recuperated for many more months. And with that, his memory slowly returned. Once again, he was Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin of crime. As soon as he gained his strength back, he went home, to be with his wife, his love, Vanessa. That was only last night. Vanessa, overwhelmed with joy and tears, was relieved to see her husband return from the dead. He swears they'll never be apart again, just once he makes Silvermane suffer for what he did. But then, Vanessa, much to his disappointment, pushes him away, for she wants him to leave his life of crime for good. She can't stand the thought of it. The two went back and forth arguing until she gives him her final ultimatum. Wilson Fisk had 24 hours to get out of crime, for if not, he would lose the one person he ever truly loved. He used majority of the time preparing for his new life, but now, in the 6 hours which remain, he plans to get rid of the one constant thorn in his side. He swears by midnight tonight, the Kingpin will kill the Amazing Spider-Man. This is it. It's do or die. Even with a broken arm, Spider-Man leaps forward, landing a mean left hook, following with a backhander towards the Kingpin's jaw. Wilson grabs the rug from underneath, pulls it, and causes Spider-Man to lose his footing. Although using his uncanny spider agility, he leaps into the air, grabs onto the chandelier, and performs a swing kick. He knows he's got to try to end this fight as fast as he possibly can. Spider-Man's constant chatter begins to only add to the fury of the Kingpin. He leaps forward and slams Spidey into the wall, and eventually, with his supreme strength, breaks it completely. Spider-Man gains some distance between his foe as doubt begins to creep in. The Kingpin was already one of his toughest villains even when he was at his full strength, but with a broken arm, what chance does he really have now? Wilson grabs the incredibly heavy bar and swings it around like it weighs merely nothing. Spider-Man must dodge each of these attacks unless he wants to add some more broken bones to his tally. The Kingpin tries to whack Spidey with the bar, but in doing so it allows for the perfect counterattack. Spider-Man lands on the other end, causing the other side to crack into Wilson's jaw. He's dazed. Spidey mustn't waste this chance. Using his own great strength, he headlocks Wilson and using a metal bar throws him headfirst into a statue of weights. Spider-Man has given himself a moment's time to try to escape, but within mere seconds the Kingpin is hot on his trail. Pressing a button on his cane, he causes the entire ceiling to become electrified. Spider-Man has no choice but to fall onto the ground after that shocking experience. Spidey, using his last remaining bits of energy, attempts another escape. He quickly leaps from wall to wall, from ground to staircase, all the while Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, slowly, menacingly follows. As Spider-Man is about to reach the top of the banister, Fisk with his sheer strength tears it apart. Spidey, using the fall to his advantage, leaps through another door, hoping and praying to find an escape. Wilson follows. This time Spider-Man has managed to find a hiding spot. Fisk aimlessly walks around the room trying to find his escaped foe. But then, using the Kingpin's own weapons against him, Spider-Man strikes him with the electrical lance. As Wilson tries to quickly recover, Spidey whacks him with it once more, but due to the pure muscle body of the Kingpin, it causes the lance to break. Spider-Man can't believe it. Fisk is already shaking off the blast effect. He doesn't have much time left, but then, his spider senses go crazy, for the Kingpin has now grown tired of how long this fight has drawn out. Using his cane, he begins to shoot lasers at the wall crawler. Spider-Man dodges all the attacks and webs the weapon out of Wilson's grip. It suits him fine, for he believes his bare hands are more than enough to slay his foe. The two lock into battle once again. Spidey dives under Wilson to evade a powerful strike, but is immediately met with a backhander to his head. Spider-Man regains his footing and lands an uppercut. He swiftly follows up with a kick to the stomach. However, due to his injuries, the Kingpin manages to gain the upper hand after landing a crushing blow to the jaw. Fisk is ready to end this once and for all. But unbeknown to him, Spider-Man secretly shoots a web line towards a giant cabinet, and right before Wilson can deal the finishing blow, Spidey yanks the web, causing it to slam right into the Kingpin. Spider-Man tells him he just wants to get out of here. He's sick of fighting, but Wilson Fisk assures him the only way he'll leave this mansion is in a coffin. Using all his rage, he throws the cabinet through the ground in an attempt to end the wall crawler's life. Spider-Man thanks him for providing the opportunity to escape and leaps down through the hole. The Kingpin mustn't let him go, for his future serenity depends on his immediate demise. Underneath, Spider-Man ponders in silence. He has no clue where he is in the mansion. It's pitch black, and if he uses his spider signal, it would surely alert his foe of his whereabouts. But then, somehow, by some way, the Kingpin manages to find the wall crawler. But using his trusty spider sense, Spider-Man leaps out of the way, perfectly evading the attack, much to Wilson's confusement at how one can pull off such a thing. Spidey tries to use the darkness as a way to gain the advantage. However, the Kingpin ruins that plan soon after, as he destroys the support beams, causing majority of the mansion to cave in. Spider-Man lands on his injured side, and can do nothing but watch on as the debris falls right on top of him. Once everything's settled, Fisk manages to spot the defeated web slinger within the rubble, and drags him into the light, for he wants to see his foe die before him. Ever since their paths crossed, the Kingpin has been waiting for this moment. He views himself as someone who never fails. His track record proves such a big claim, and Spider-Man's death will be both his crowning achievement and his farewell. Right before he shoots his foe, the clock begins to strike tones as it hits midnight. Then suddenly, the library door slides open, revealing Vanessa standing there, asking if Wilson has made his choice. He pleads for just an extra moment of time, for it is all he needs to assure a bountiful future for the two of them. However, Vanessa is having none of it. There can be no further delays. Wilson must decide now. It's either Spider-Man's life or their life together. The Kingpin hesitates. For 1 second is all it would take to end his foe. It would be so simple. All he has to do is press the trigger and finally be gone of everything he sought to remedy. Press the trigger and his absolute record of success would remain perfect. It isn't fair, he proclaims in a fit of rage, but he must take a second to breathe, to think. And slowly he drops his cane. For while other men tremble at his power, Wilson Fisk trembles with his love for his darling Vanessa. The two share a moment of passion as their future is set, and leave a broken Spider-Man within the remains of his crumbled mansion, in the remains of his past life, in the remains of the great Kingpin of crime. This issue is one that manages to stick out to me whenever I reread some classic Spidey stories. Maybe it's because of how brutal it is at times, with two powerful figures just continuously fighting for a solid 6 hours, or maybe seeing the Kingpin give up his life of crime in a way that was so captivating. I also like how a major theme for this comic was all about one's past and dealing with said past. The Kingpin throughout the entire issue is at the hands of his actions he's committed during his whole life. He's constantly, literally battling to be free of them once and for all in order to be with his love Vanessa, and I think having him walk away from a surefire win against his greatest foe at the time made the whole ending even more impactful. Now, I didn't show it during the story, but there's a page within this issue that also adds to the overall theme as well as Jameson's character as a whole. In short, Robbie Robertson is fed up with Jonah's antics and constant slandered viewpoints to the point where he actually quits for good this time. It leaves Jonah broken. Robbie is like a brother to him, and now he's gone too. He's chased him away just like he does to everyone else. His son John, his wife Joanne. He feels as though sooner or later, they all leave. Sooner or later, it all comes down to this: him being alone. Always alone. But he knows this time he can't blame anyone else for what's happened. He knows it's his fault. He finally knows it's always been his fault. He realizes that he must tear down that stone wall he puts up to save himself. But he doesn't believe he's got the strength to do it. This one incredible page has done more good for the character of J. Jonah Jameson than the last however many years of crappy Spider-Man comics we've received. Too often he's this annoying publisher who doesn't even feel like a real person, but here it shows that deep down he does have a heart, that deep down he truly does care. It's a reason to why we can actually feel for Jameson. For a man who lives through the worst of circumstances is a sad thing indeed, but a man who brings his own misfortunes is a tragedy. I found the battle between Spider-Man and Kingpin so enthralling to read. The constant back and forth was so intense, and you really felt the tension begin to rise as the Kingpin was getting closer and closer to a victory over the injured Spider-Man. Granted, Spidey lost, but this issue still displayed the insane courage he possesses to still be able to keep going for as long as he did with a broken arm, as well as him wanting to finish the fight to the very end. Overall, I had a blast revisiting this issue. It's definitely a highlight for me within the Marv Wolfman era of the Spider-Man comics, and as a conclusion of sorts for the Kingpin until his eventual return, I'm more than happy with the way it was written. Vanessa means more to the Kingpin than anything else. Of course he'd try to live a peaceful life for her. It certainly won't be the last attempt. And to end the issue with a half-dead, dazed Spider-Man still wanting to fight on against a foe set to win, where he can do nothing but lay there bruised and battered, is an ending I'll never forget. Truly, it's one of the most brutal and entertaining Spider-Man comics of all time.